All right. There we go. And we're all here. Cool. Hey guys.
Hey,
Hello.
That's cool. Yeah, thank you, Yuri. Thank you for joining. I think you have the shittiest time zone of all of us.
no, it's 8 o'clock and I wake up like usually between 4 and 5. So
which in itself, I told you before, which in itself
yes,
is pretty crazy. But hey, yeah, cool.
I
Cool to
have
have you.
kids. I have to also get up between 5 and 6 every
it's
single
it's
day.
the most it's the most serene time. But my daughter this week started waking up roughly at the same time, so I don't have it anymore.
All right, fair
Well,
enough.
my kids are at school, so I simply have no way around this. I even have to wake up two grumpy kids in the morning.
Mhm.
All right, cool. Yeah, maybe we all just say five words, 6 words about us. Whoever wants to go first.
I can go first.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, yeah, I'm Jochen, principal engineer at HyphenQ. Well, yeah, I've been traveling around a lot in IT. Former colleague of Chris, it's like quite a while back that we worked together. Been like in consulting for 10 years, back into the whole startup madness world, and right now, way too deep invested with everything AI and agentic coding.
All right, cool.
I can go next, I guess. I've been in this space with computers for majority of my life, and I don't like dating myself too much. But it's been way too long, and I've seen a lot of fun stuff and not so fun stuff. Uh, Generally revolving around everything that relates to developers' experience, and that is, not just the DX on the at the high level, but actually going all the way to the bottom. That is, how do we create programs? How do we create systems? That is the question that bothered me for at least last 20 years. And I've worked also in other industries like fintech, like especially around blockchain, etc. Before it was too cool in the early days. But otherwise, I've founded a couple of companies before. They were never big, and now I'm a founder at Inferal, where we do interesting things with data. That is, we're changing the way data architecture is. And speaking of AI, the topic of today. I used to be not a naysayer, but I was very careful about it. Maybe about a year ago, but I have started changing my stance about it sometime last year. I guess that's why I'm here.
All right, cool. Yeah. For the ones that don't know me, I'm Chris. I think Jochen already said most about me. We worked
Sorry.
together. We worked. Actually, we only worked at one company, but we know for many years. I
Yeah.
don't know even why. I've been in the startup world for a long time. Had my own startup. Went to a couple of different startups. A lot of Postgres, a lot of distributed systems, a lot of I don't know what else. Everything. And yeah, Yuri, kind of the same thing. I was same way. I'm not saying no, but I was always like very careful, mostly because of the lot of like, let's be blunt, a lot of bullshit that people bring up, like, oh, they will just do everything, they will get rid of engineers. And um I learned to like it a lot as an efficiency driver. But the way I normally put it is, if you're able to write the code yourself, you're also able to make the best out of an AI coding agent.
Yes.
At least for now. Let's see how it goes in the future. But that's my current stance on that. And in general, hey Meaty, cool that you joined us. If there is anyone in the chat who wants to ask questions, just feel free, drop them into the chat, either on Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn. We should see all of it. And I'm happy to redirect the questions. For today's topic, it came up mostly. So here's the thing. It wasn't meant to be an actual discussion with multiple people, but it's cool that it kind of ended up being like that. So the whole question came up because with SimplyBlock we just published Vela, an open source project, basically a serverless, self-hostable Postgres platform. That's what we're building. And because every Postgres platform under the sun comes up with their own MCP server, the main question was like, should it be an MCP or not? Then the whole discussion came, maybe you don't even need an MCP. Maybe you just need something like OpenClaw. Maybe the way to go is, here's a CLI. The agent will understand how to use it anyways. What's your general stance on that? Do you have you used MCP servers before? Do you find them helpful, and if so, in what kind of like capacity?
I removed most of them. I mean, yeah, like last week, I basically burned my whole .cloud folder, like for the simple reason that because like there's so much learnings that go into the AI, so it really makes sense. Like I threw away every agent configuration I had, every like skill, and basically restarted from scratch, realizing that like right now I have like 4 or 5 skills at all that I need, and just 3 agents that I had actually created. The rest is just like small context, because you like right now it's like with Claude less and less that you have to actually tell it that it gets right what it has to do. And with MCP, I mean, like it was like one of those hype vehicles. It was the first way like for an AI to actually interact with the outside world. And if you look at like there's always this picture like where you see basically like the amount of creators versus the amount of MCP users. MCP was never really that much used. Like there is a few good ones, like the one I use is like the one for linear and the one for IntelliJ, because like IntelliJ, the one is just great because it's the fastest way to parse an AST, and that's pretty much it. The biggest issue I see, and that's probably like also like we're like I throw in the discussion, is the way forward for me is CLI. The problem is credentials. Like virtually none of the CLI tools allow basically like transparent interaction with something like 1Password, Bitwarden, or any other secret management. That's the gap. And this is basically why I don't see that MCP is going away right now, because we see the whole disasters that OpenClaw has already caused, like with its like working with credentials. I don't want it, like I'm working in dev containers, making sure that like I have just temporary keys, like whenever I give something to Claude, like so it has to interact with an API. So for me, the security aspect is the one and only advantage that MCP has. Everything else is better with CLI, but currently, if you have investigated, like none of the popular tools, not curl, not netcat, none of these actually support interacting with some sort of secret management. Like this is like my position. So I don't like MCP because it's very limited. It's a lot of additional work. We know way more in the AI about the CLI tooling that is out there, but security.
Right. Maybe let's go Yuri first, and when we come back to that.
Sure. I think it's a really great question, and I've created a lot of MCPs in the past couple of months. Well, maybe not in the last 2 months, but before that, I've cranked out a whole ton of them, and they were sort of useful. In a sense, you know, they've done some functionality. But the realization that I had is that if you think about it, what is an MCP? MCP is basically a programming language with only one construct, and that is called a function. The moment you need to do anything else, like if then else, you know, as simple as that, right? Basically, you're delegating if then else, a very simple construct, to an LLM. So you're basically just doing an if then else on, say, Anthropic's servers or something like that, which is not the cheapest way to do that. And basically, yeah, like let's see, like what else can we use? CLI is one, but then your programming language of choice is often shell, and that is not the best language generally. Even for, I mean, obviously, I never liked writing shell myself. Claude is obviously better at that. Even Claude, you know, misses escaping and whatnot. But if you think about it, if it is a program, wouldn't it be great to use a typed language for that? Especially if language has introspection as well, like dynamic introspection, if you can. So something like, I don't know, TypeScript or Python with typing, or I don't know, like there's a lot of options, right? Something that doesn't really need compilation, but also has a type system that can be used and can be enforced or explored at least. And then you have all the constructs that you need for programming. So basically, you can formulate a problem exactly as it is, right? And validate that this is actually a valid program, that we're not going to just trip up for no good reason, and just do that. And if you look at it, Cloudflare recently corroborated that same finding, you know, with releasing their code mode SDK, and basically how they exposed their API documentation effectively.
Mhm.
That is, they have like 1,500 endpoints, right? This is not going to fit any context whatsoever. So they said, here's the SDK. We'll just run the code against it. And
Mhm.
that is how we know how we can access it and all that. And then it becomes a question of, in these programs, you'll obviously interact with external services like HTTP or whatnot. You're calling programs, like you still have to call programs from, basically like doing CLI from your program. And I think the point of credentials is really important here.
Yeah.
I've faced that very same problem, and I have kind of 1.5 to 2 solutions that I've employed kind of at the same time. So one is use a credential management service of a sort, like basically a library that just does it for you. So basically you teach how to use that library within that same API. So we basically fetch it from wherever that is. Not really important to LLM. It could be in your local, manager, whatever, like operating system you're using. It can be a remote system, like in physical or something like that, where they store all credentials over, somewhere over there in the cloud. And they basically inject, well, you either use their API to get the credentials, or you simply inject environment variables if it's difficult to inject them directly.
So that means what you've done is basically having an authorization service that returns a token that can be used together with the CLI or something like that.
Or with any library, like for example,
Right.
you're using some library that needs to make requests somewhere. We need to write that, and I don't ever want to see my tokens in my conversation with LLM.
Right.
Of course, I've taught it to avoid that when it does go CLI route, because I'm seeing pretty good adherence right now. So it's using methods how to conceal it if we do have to shuttle it around, like not just, print it and then read it and send somewhere else, just create a pipeline basically, right? Always conceal it. I have that as a precautionary measure. But when it's writing programs, basically use a library, whether that's a running service or not, it doesn't really matter. It's just an API to get a key, pass it somewhere else.
Yeah. May interject just like, but that is a very limited approach, because you're just looking at the perspective when you write program like a web service, or something like that. But like, let's go deeper. Like, for example, like I do a lot like hardware work, like interacting with hardware. So I do not want my application to re-implement Wireshark. Same with Netcat. Same with like a lot of these native tools. Like you're right. Like when we were just talking about like interacting with an Open API spec, you can go like curl an Open API spec, or you just go Python and like have it swallow it up and do its thing. The problem is that it's just a limited use case. Like same things for you. I have right now Claude debugging my Kubernetes cluster. I don't want Claude to re-implement kubectl. Like the whole pipeline is there. The tools are there. Like the operational tools are there that are then used together with Argo and other tooling. So this is like what you're saying again, and there I agree. Basically, like when it's really down to the case, I'm interacting with some sort of API or something. Yeah, then like clearly, like just like having it implement some tooling wins. But the moment I'm actually like having dedicated tooling that is highly advanced, which we have like in a lot of areas, when you go in like the world of SRE, when you like go like in general, I guess like in hardware world, suddenly that changes, because like you will iterate like for 2 days just to get the baseline functionality going. Where, for example, like already right now, Claude is awesome in just like analyzing whatever Wireshark throws at it. But like, so I don't have to re-implement it. It's all there. I just have to have it used. But like, problem is I have to give it then root access to certain parts of the system.
Right.
All that. So like we're back like to that. So that's what I mean. Like I agree on the API part, like so long as I'm talking to your servers. But the moment I'm getting into some more specialized stuff, like things start breaking down, or like just Ansible, which is running with a second agent here right now. Also, like I don't want it to re-implement Ansible. Like I just needed to basically crunch out some playbooks and try them out to give me basically what I need on my service back there.
So
yeah,
go ahead.
Just answer that. I don't actually disagree with that, and I think this is where, if I'm understanding what you're saying, it's still like you don't need to re-implement stuff like kubectl or something like that, right? You can always inject, as simple as environment variables, like for example, if you need credentials to access something. Or for example, I have a case where whenever we're in our workspace, we are authenticated with our Kubernetes cluster, right? And so basically, all of that is just like OIDC type of authentication. So basically, it comes through that. So basically, there's all kind of leases happening there. But it's more of a environment setup issue rather than LLM. It's just basically preparing the environment so it is conducive to that use.
But isn't that one of the things what MCP was supposed to solve? I mean, from a technology or from a functionality perspective, it's basically just like a limited CLI, right? You're not using a CLI. Initially, you had the standard out. Now everyone's, I guess, using SSE. But the main point that it actually solved was like giving you a specific functionality and say, here is also how you have the authorization part or like the authentication part handled.
I mean, MCP was there before Claude and the others actually started to interact with the CLI. So it was just really like the first thing that people actually came up with. I don't know, like, yes, it was like that part basically giving access and also providing some context. I mean, like that was also the whole idea, like, because it was from the beginning, it was able to stream a lot of data using SSE and all that. But the actual really important part was that like you had the tools inside the MCP and like the LLM instantly knew what to do and when to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I still think that like MCP would probably not be here if people would have gotten like straight to the CLI as a first part. Like I don't think there was ever like this thinking, yeah, we need that security. There was more something that, oh hey man, like we have like HTTP here, because I think it's using gRPC under the hood if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So
awesome, like we can use all these nice workflows around it. And I think it was more like, oh hey, we built this and wow, it can also do that.
So from my perspective, I think there is two things. First of all, MCP, because let's assume we never had the standard out or standard IO version. Let's assume we have HTTP, SSE, gRPC, whatever. I think one of the main benefits is that I don't have to have it locally, right? I could say, for example, as a platform, I can say, hey, I have one server running for all of my multi-tenants. And providing it remotely. Nobody has to set up anything. You initially sign up or sign in and you're good. The other thing is that those things typically communicate using JSON or whatever. So there's no weird string parsing from the CLI. I think you can do that. Don't get me wrong. There's always a way. Like Simpleblock also has it. Our storage engine. You can say, "Hey, give me the response as JSON," but you still have to get it through standard I/O. You have to parse it. I don't know. It feels weird. I know that it's not a big deal, right? It's not a problem, but it kind of feels weird. I mean, it goes against anything we've learned in the last decade or so. Maybe I'm just getting old. I don't know.
Yeah, there's actually an interesting thing that I wanted to bring into this discussion, and it's from a part that I know very little about, but I kind of cursory seen it, and it's not supported in Claude. I'm not yet sure about the reasons. I didn't have enough time to explore that. But there is this thing, if I remember correctly, in MCP spec, and that is elicitations. So basically, when the tool can send messages back to the agent, so basically tool originating messages, that is actually an interesting case. Whether MCP, that would be MCP or not, any thing that you run, whether that's your programming, whatever you're running, as part of your agents or agentic setup, if it can communicate to the agent as another way of input, whether that's following the exact elicitation format or not, doesn't really matter. But I think that is a question to discuss, because we're often talking about how agents use the tools to access something or do something, but all the communication kind of goes just from a human, right? Like basically you have your chat box, right? Whereas can we actually start feeding multiple things where these things live in parallel? Like, for example, as simple as webhook arrived somewhere, I want to deliver that out of my personal band. Like you have a chat box, right? So for example, we have like a public service we've launched recently where you can register a webhook receiver. So you don't have to run your own, right? It's basically like a super reliable webhook receiver. And if I had a program that is just running in the background that claimed the webhook host starts receiving, and whenever it's receiving them, it's basically talking to the agent, say, hey, I got something. So I can have a chat session where I'm either chatting or not chatting, but it's reacting to stuff that is happening out in the world. So it's becoming bidirectional. So I think that is an interesting part of the discussion, MCP or not, but about the mode of communication.
Yeah, but like therefore I have to say that's already there. Like the concept of the LLM loop is like a core foundation like for working with agents. I mean, like that's what we're looking at like in our Pulse project and in other parts. Basically having an LLM or agent constantly reacting to changes in its environment. I mean, that's also like what OpenClaw did. Like it's like that's like I think the core implementation of OpenClaw is exactly that, to have like this agent loop where we have emails being fed in, and this thing just iterates without you being there. Basically, just like it gets like the prompts fired in by like the surrounding systems. So I don't see MCP like even being required for that. Actually, like it's probably even better to not have it there, because like then you're more flexible, because like in the end, like the only thing the LLM cares about is like, yeah, I get a prompt, I have something to do. You can collect this like OpenClaw is doing it, or like you have like in other agentic systems where you have basically, if you go like now like with -q, like you get a signal from a machine that is out, basically like which triggers then the LLM loop, and the LLM says, yeah, well, hey, yeah, I'm gonna do this, or I have to report that. So I don't think this is a good point. I mean, like with SSE, this functionality was always there because you have the open back channels all the time. I didn't know that Claude was actually not able to use it. That's a good info. Like I have to check that out.
It just for some reason there is no like elicitation API support still to this day. Yeah, but yeah, I agree that it does exist in other agentic environments, OpenClaw, etc. What I'm saying is specifically in this context of conversation with like Claude, right? Like the interface that we get does not really have that. It's still human driven to a large degree. Yes, they started doing the agents talking to each other kind of thing, but I just want to deploy programs that kind of get into the communication band in my
You can do that with Claude. You can do this with their SDK. It's just like not like something
with SDK, yes.
Yeah, I mean, like we have a coding agent. Come on, like we just talked about that. Like you have the SDK, just let it go wild, and you can implement your own agent loop, like operating on Claude and using Claude for that. So that stuff is absolutely possible, and it's not tied to MCP. So like, it's a fair point, but still, like I don't see where MCP would have any advantage over the other existing tooling right now. Like as long as you get access to, as long as you can have a SDK path to push a prompt into your LLM, you're done, because then you can go back to using tools or anything.
Go ahead.
So one of the things that I find very interesting when we look at MCP, because I also think it's actually wrong when people say that. The whole point about MCP was like to standardize access in like air quotes to data or to functionality. And I was like, yeah, but neither the request nor the response is any standard. The only thing that is standard is HTTP, gRPC, whatever. So I think that is one of the things where people keep talking like, hey, this is what it was used for, but it never got standardized in the way. Like the only thing that is actually quite nice, I think, in the way what is standardized is that it tells you what the schema is, what functionality is available, and gives a description. I think that's actually fairly nice, because you can just connect to an MCP and it basically tells you what to do with it and what is possible. I think a skill explaining a specific CLI would basically do the same thing, but it is a nice, convenient thing.
Right.
I see there's not much agreement with that.
Well, I agree. I mean, like that's like the MCPs I use, which basically is like the linear one, because it's just like a great integration with linear, because like they're a SaaS company. Like we use them for task tracking and anything. It matches perfectly with my workflow that I have, basically having to create tickets, wire it to like issues, wire it to pull requests and all that. And it's the same with IntelliJ MCP. Like there, I'm actually unsure, but like IntelliJ does not have like any CLI application for that. They just have the IDEA command that you have. So basically, like I think like that's the only path that they actually have there. But because before that, I was using AST grep. If anybody still knows that, like that was like when I realized just like how much grabbing was going on in the code base, like that was like actually the first MCP server I ever used was AST grep to basically avoid like the costly constantly going through the code base thing. there might still be a place. And I was actually surprised because I just checked. I thought MCP was like gRPC by default. Nope, that was added later, and it was just HTTP2 like from the start. So
Okay.
there really is no definition on the payload, and that makes it even less useful, because like with gRPC, I would have counted on, no, there's protobuf. Nope. So like there's really no basically standardization or anything going on really.
Right. So one thing that I think is probably an interesting question, and I don't really have an answer to that myself. So we're all engineers. We have no problem using CLIs and stuff. When we look at how agentic AI is used, a lot of those people are not necessarily engineers, but less technical people. I mean, it could be as simple as somebody in sales or marketing trying to build like a small API, a small application. Do you think there is more value in something as simple as putting in a URL for an MCP over installing a CLI, probably configuring it and stuff like that for somebody who's not super technical?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have the 1 point for MCP. Yay!
It's down like it's like, yeah, like absolutely. And it's also the security topic again. If you go companies, and I mean, like, we are in the age like of the late revenge of SOA architectures. I think that's what a lot of people missed out, like came back with a vengeance and is now ruling the world, because that's essentially what we built with all the clouds. Like if you think about like in bigger companies, you hide SAP and all these stuff like behind nice APIs. You give access for like your AI to it, and you can cut out a whole engineering department.
So
this is basically like what's been going on with people. That's why people have been abusing Axel and Access for years. Like, no, like business people are smart. Like it was us, the engineers, who were the problem, who were in between and slowing them down. But if you now basically reduce the work to have like BAPIs or anything basically more accessible in a way, like be it MCP or something else, you don't need like an engineering department to be, because like most of the guys, like they're building business applications that they need. They are like used by 4 or 5 people. Right now, suddenly like we're out of the Microsoft ecosystem into something that is actually manageable in one way or the other, and you accelerate massively, because like this in the end the only thing that matters. Time to market is the only measure that we normally like really care about. So yeah, that's from my
so you're saying from an enterprise perspective, it definitely makes sense to have something abstracted basically from all of your data sources or whatever you have in the company, and offer that to people as an MCP server, saying, hey, run your request. The MCP will answer across data sources and whatever, and give you a holistic picture. Hopefully, I'm not sure if you've seen it. The other day, somebody was talking about that the AI made up numbers for like 2 years. They made business decisions on that.
Well, if you don't review.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's kind of the same thing, right? Before we started the live stream, Jochen and I were talking about it. As we said, we're still watching every single source code being generated by the agent, which I guess is just the same thing, right? If it spits out any numbers or any business numbers, do your research. I mean, you still have a job for that reason, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, we really wouldn't be needed. None of us, neither an engineer nor a salesperson or anything. But that I think that is actually a quite interesting approach to say, hey, you don't necessarily have like an MCP server for a specific product, but you basically have an MCP server that spans across multiple things, unifying it. So maybe an interesting approach could be that you have a meta MCP. The second I said it, it sounds really bad. But, basically, an MCP server unifying any. I think IntelliJ platforms kind of have that. They have the MCP where you can add other MCP servers and basically forward it. So it's kind of existing, I guess.
I did the same thing.
So I kind of think you're underestimating LLMs right now, because like the other thing, so the setup I think that would actually work best is, then if like HashiCorp Vault, like so basically you use that for temporary passwords. You can restrict data access with that. Expose the databases. Like this is like people underestimate. Just like for example, like if I've known so many business people, like when I was still in consulting, who simply knew their data and their databases. So you have an AI that helps them formulate the queries towards the database.
I think I love that because hey, everything Vala is about branching, right? So just create a new branch, have all your data, let people run wild, let the AI average agent run wild. If something happens, throw away the clone, create a new one. Who cares? So I very much agree with that. I think it all comes back to the point where when we're talking about a simple marketeer and you tell them to install the Postgres CLI tools and configure them, they're probably out of the picture already, right? If you tell them here's the MCP URL, tell Claude, Codex, whatever to use it. Don't you think that's easier?
No, why? Like give them a prepared container with the tools inside.
Okay.
That's like what I do with dev containers. Like give them a prepared container that basically opens the chat up. Like Docker is doing something. There's dev containers. There's all kind of now also going on with small VMs, and just give that to them. Have the tools installed.
I would actually agree. Or another way to think about this, because containers also require distribution, etc. Making sure they're up to date. Just remoting. I mean, we're remoting anyway. It's all going to Anthropic servers anyway. Why not have? I mean, if it's Claude, even a textual Claude as it is, SSH in. Basically it's just somewhere in, or like use a web-based doesn't really matter. It's all there. The version is always right.
I was just about to say SSH in. Simplest thing in the world. But yeah, sure. You could build a web application that basically lets you run arbitrary queries or whatever, or arbitrary
with all the right, all the right sort of versions of say Python in the container if we need to run some Python scripts or whatnot. Basically having all the stuff that they need. Why would they need to run it locally? Like unless you're developing an application that needs to run locally, you don't really need to be local.
Yeah, that's fair. So the idea would be a very minimal application that already knows who you are in most probable ways, so it has access to everything, and offers you a chat interface just like Claude itself, and basically just pipes it. That is actually not a bad idea, but I think we just discussed building a UI around an MCP server.
Right. I mean, there's no like MCP there. Like basically MCP, I think the greatest point you, Chris, brought to this in the beginning was that it abstracted where this interface is. Can be here, can be there, doesn't really matter. Are we running it here? Are we accessing it over HTTP? And there's something to that. I can't quite like put my finger on it, but there's something about that. I'm not like necessarily operating this locally. Like just to give you an example, a similar plane of conversation here. I'm using Claude Agent SDK right now to build a slightly different experience, slightly different UI, but they are effectively communicating over a CLI, right? They're just calling Claude with certain parameters, and basically just get response, right? Streaming or not, doesn't matter. All of that stuff. And one of the early thoughts was, hey, can I actually have, like when I'm traveling with a different laptop or something like this, can I still access, my stuff that is happening somewhere else with the same app? And then I realized, well, at the very least, I can call my Claude, because what if I replace Claude binary with a shell script that essentially just calls Claude over SSH, right? I mean, it's going to be slower. I do want to maintain a permanent connection to that, but oversimplify and just SSH over and get it done. And that kind of strips away again this question of where is this stuff? It doesn't really matter anymore.
Right.
So basically, this level of interaction can happen either at MCP level or code mode type of level, or SSH over to your Claude. So if that's kind of the remaining benefit of MCP, is it like that big of a benefit or not?
The bigger, I mean, like the assumption that is coming from that is that the MCP also like somehow magically manifests. And like the thing that I more and more see and understand is just like it's just like an additional layer in between that can cause issues. Like if I talk to an API right now, I can go the path of, I take the Open API spec, I generate like a matching MCP server, take care of all that, or I just give the Open API spec to my local LLM or to an LLM in general. And it's the same thing with other things. For example, like when we're talking to a database. So the classic like banking case, like I've seen that in like 4 ages where like, you have this huge database that includes like tons of data, highly complicated. The reason why ORMs actually exist is like these types of databases. And a lot of documentation is actually in the database.
Yeah.
Like old school database design, which was not bad, just to make it very clear. Like it's just like that people have stopped understanding how to actually properly document databases. But if you have one of those old school databases that started out in the 80s or 90s, like you often enough, the database produces a ton of information already. So you can just like hook up any like database exploration tool and you get more information out of it as any documentation anywhere in the company will ever give you.
I think it not even comes down to the design of the database. I think it's even, well, not worse is the wrong term, but it's even stronger when you think how much semantic is injected or encoded in databases, in tables, in probably IDs or whatever, right? And I think from my perspective, that is really where LLMs shine because they get the patterns right.
Yeah.
Or at least they're better in discovering patterns than the typical human. Maybe Alan Turing was different, but the general human is not a great pattern matcher. So from that perspective, yes, I agree. Direct access to the database and having the LLM just trying to discover all of that is probably better. But to be honest, if I have, coming back to it, I have an MCP and I can tell it, list me all tables, give me the schema for the table, give me data, it would probably come down to the same thing. But what I agree with is that, and that's where my question in general came from initially, it creates additional work. If I just created CLI, a human can use it, and the agent can use it, and whatever in the future probably can use it as well, right? Whereas an MCP, that's a very specific thing. I guess we could build a user interface to use it, or use it as a general API, but it's not. I mean, the world is built on REST APIs, so it doesn't really make sense to add another abstraction as MCP for an external API. I already find GraphQL very complicated and not necessarily useful.
And let's maybe also not forget that like it's hard to chain MCPs. Like that's like the next downside, and that's like where like also CLI shines. I mean, if you go like the route, like yes, it's an abstraction, it's all that, like it can work, and even with GraphQL, it can work. Now try to chain operations together.
And that's a perfect case for the code mode. Basically, like you're chaining, like you need a language around function calls.
With chaining, you mean piping, like piping commands.
Piping, like simply just the fact like grab something from here, put it here, do something here, send it back here. Like classic,
right.
Like if you're on the shell, like you have to grab, org, set, whatever. If you're looking API wise, if you go like SOA orchestration, which is basically like the one thing, you have like one thing that provides you with data on accounts. You have like more here. As I mentioned, you have to fuse that information in one way and put it in the third place for reporting.
Right. I see what you mean. Yeah, that actually makes sense, because when you have direct access to the database, you can just run a single query doing all of that in one step instead of getting the intermediate. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. But in this case, the CLI only helps you because it has a generic query interface. If you have an MCP server with a tool query, and you can give it an arbitrary query, it would do the same thing. I'm not sure if there is a good argument either way. In both cases, if the database doesn't support you messing it up, you have an issue.
Also, audit, like they now like we're getting to the classic problem. That's like where probably MCP can shine. Auditability. Like none of the systems we have in use today. Like if you're not like fortunate enough to live in a world like where you have a secret management system in place that can give out temporary tokens, you're suddenly in the world like where you have to start begging the database operators to give you like access to certain, like for an undetermined time. You don't know like what people pull. that's like again like a bonus point for MCP, because that's all you can basically put into an MCP, like per user, per anything, like easier, like especially if it's not supported. Like most databases run maybe like 2 or 3 users at all, like they don't have like an actually like user system to like interact with. That is maybe like an argument in favor of MCP for that kind of cases.
I would actually disagree with that. I think that basically then you're if there's going to be an authentication authorization layer for MCPs, where do the users go? Like if they're using, say, CLIs or anything, like it's either covering everything or it covers nothing, because maintaining 2 systems is it's maintaining 2 systems, and like they never like I don't want to maintain 2 credential systems. I mean, I would prefer not to.
You don't want to,
right?
But then comes the evil person with the compliance hammer.
What
like
is
this?
That?
I've been in this world for way too long, but like this is basically like the problem that's coming. And like, I mean, it's a fair problem if you go like if you suddenly have access to like the mainframe database and you have basically access to the history of a bank that dates back into the 70s. That's like unbelievable trove of information that you suddenly have access to, and that's like why there's like so many completely either walled gardens or like huge defenses, like major parts of like how you can get access to that kind of stuff. So, and I think like that's actually the hard problems, because like what we're discussing here is basically like the happy joy unicorn land where like we can do all of that, and suddenly like you come into an area where like, well, not every person should be able to derive certain information from the data they have access to.
Yeah, that is actually a good point. I mean, that's the whole PII problem, right?
Yeah.
I think you can actually solve that on a database level. At least for Postgres, there's cool tools that give you the option to live change the result, basically hiding columns with column level security, or even there's Postgres anonymizer, I think, which you can give rules. If you query a specific column, it will jungle or hash or whatever. So you still have like the consistency across data columns or across tables, but you have no way to get to the information at all, which I think is actually quite interesting.
Then I have a challenge for you.
For me, okay. Yeah. All right.
Convince German banks to switch to Postgres.
Well,
you know what they're running.
We're working on that.
Okay.
No, I think I think it would be a challenge for both of us, for Yuri and me. But I think the main problem is Postgres doesn't run on mainframes.
Yes, I mean, like that's the key problem. But like in general, like like you have a multitude of systems like that are still out there, and this has always been the challenge in that kind of environments to basically find a way to have safe access to data. I mean, like we have to all this bullshit with like enterprise service bus and all and these kind of stuff, like where like they've tried to solve these problems like for decades by now, and right now, like everybody, like who's right now talking about, oh man, like we can democratize data. Like I want to hit people who say that, because like that has never worked. Suddenly realize, okay, well, tech was never the problem.
Yeah.
That kind of because like it's like it's probably getting like a little faster. But if you look into like basically what happens before engineering even starts to work, is like months of compliance analysis. Like if you can actually do that stuff, if you're allowed to do that. And that's something that's not going away. And AI is not going to solve that for you. And like the infrastructure is not capable of solving that for you. So like there's a lot of interesting problems that might become right now priority when everybody realizes, well, engineering was maybe part of the problem, but like a smaller one than everybody expected.
It's actually interesting because we definitely have some agreement on logging. We do have some agreement on logging. So kudos to you for bringing that up, I guess. But I mean, we're 35 minutes in, and it seems like we're making circles, or we're always coming back to it's not really useful. Is that our conclusion here, or? I mean, we brought up the audit, or like the auditing and some kind of an additional or more sophisticated access control. But at least from a Postgres perspective, not sure. I'm pretty sure SQL Server and Oracle will have the same functionality. Not sure about MySQL, but whoever uses that is not serious anyways. sorry, MySQL folks. You have row level security, you have column level security, you have roles, you have permissions. You can, if you want those kinds of things on a user level, I think you can build it in the database. For other applications, I think it's actually more critical. A lot of things that have CLIs might not have those guardrails built in, so that is probably something where MCP would really shine. I agree with that. A database level, I don't know.
I mean, I have the most engineering answer to that exists. It depends.
There you go. That's the consultant answer. You said you did 10 years of consulting. That's the consultant.
Yeah, no, but like it's still like, I think it's the engineering answer, because like there is no completely bad solution ever. SOA, like they're like, the ideas were solid. Like we still see it coming back today. Even microservices, I dread most of the people like how they've implemented it, but like it has its place. The problem is just like, we engineers are as hype driven as many others are. We follow like every single hype to the maximum. And like MCP, I think, has shown that. I don't say that MCP is bad inherently. Like we have to be aware of the limitations and the advantages that you have with CLI, but like we also pointed out like the certain shortcomings of CLI. So it depends on your use case. Like MCP, I use, like, it's not that I don't use MCP. I mentioned that before, and they're like, the MCPs work perfectly. They solve a problem for me. Well, then it's a solution to a problem I had. So the good question is just like that people like step out of this like hype and actually become pragmatic about basically, let's look at the problem we're trying to solve. Not pick a solution like us, like many do. Basically, yeah, well, I have a solution here. Can we make the problem fit the solution? And so that's like, it depends.
Yeah, Sean actually added. I was also thinking that CLI tools can't be necessarily like, can't be locked down like an MCP service. I think that comes down to how you do it. For a CLI, you probably have to do it in the service layer itself that the CLI also uses to communicate, or you have to do it in a sandbox, like most CLI tools run in sandboxes. I think an MCP server is nice to kind of centralize that and ensure that from a deployment perspective, you could do it once, like we said, do it somewhere remote, you do it once and then it's good. But I think, as we said, you could also have like a remote container or application to log into and do the same thing. Before we stop, because I don't think we're coming back to the same thing, right? What I think about is like, I'm currently looking into, should we build an MCP server or not? Right? Should be, I mean, so my approach would be, I have a client library and the CLI uses the client library, the MCP uses the client libraries. Simple stuff. It's probably a day of additional work, right? Do we think it's valuable to waste this day, or maybe even if it would be a week, right? But even if it's fast, is it worth it, or do we really believe there's like no worth at all in MCP going forward, right? Imagine you would have to write a new one.
I stopped investing in MCPs on my end right now. So I want to spend more. Well, basically, I'm already doing this in bespoke ways, but I want to spend a little more time looking at how exactly Code Mode SDK by Cloudflare can help me as well. Basically, facilitating offloading, branching logic, all of that that I'm doing in a bespoke way right now. So I basically don't invest much time. I think any language with introspection can offer the same introspection MCP can.
Okay. I think I'll quickly get Sean into the call. Sean, I sent you the link on LinkedIn because he keeps bringing stuff up. He literally just said I can't introspect or decompile a container file. Because you brought up introspection. I think it would be cool if he can elaborate on that just so slightly. So hope he sees that. Give him a second. The stream is probably a little bit behind, so. But So sorry, I was kind of distracted. So the answer was like you stopped investing into that, and you think the time should be spent somewhere else.
Yeah, so basically what I was saying, I stopped investing in MCPs and I invest more time in basically using Claude to generate scripts to solve their problems. So that basically what I'm trying to often optimize is latency to outcome. So every time Claude is, or whatever you use, is tasked with problems that are completely deterministically solvable with code, like, if, then, else, some computation, etc. Why send it there? If we can do it on our end, all that branch and logic, do it here. It means the latency to your outcome will be sometimes like 10 times faster, 100 times faster. Like if we need to iterate through, I don't know, 100 results, if we have a script that does that and then just dumps the output, here we go. Otherwise, you would have Claude being like, oh, I got this, now I start this, now I got this. Like imagine you have an MCP that gets your result per ID. Because, that was the use case the author of MCP thought of, and then you have 100 of them. What do? Like call MCP 100 times and process every single one of them? That's computationally weird, and the latency to outcome that you're hoping for has increased like 100 times, really.
Yeah, I think that is probably one of the best arguments so far, right? Like I said, you can have a tool that tells you list all tables, but then if you need to introspect the table, you have to do it one by one. To be honest, I think that's pretty much what you would do with a database either way, like IntelliJ or IntelliJ tools when they introspect the database. I think that's pretty much what they do bit by bit. But yeah,
I mean, making sequential calls to something is not the problem. I mean, it can be a problem, but not necessarily
it's
a problem.
definitely much
it's
slower.
what's between them. It's what's between them. If it's LLM deciding what to do next, or the script. If the logic can be encoded in a script, it doesn't have to be deterministic. It can be a random number generator, if anything, right?
Right.
But if it can be there, it means we cut out that whole latency out of the game.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
There's no request response loop.
But as I mentioned, I mean, you bring up a completely fair point, and I have built an MCP in months. Like I've experimented a lot, like when the whole spec came out, and with all that, re-implemented it from scratch just to see basically how it's working. But like the thing is, in the end, I file it under things I know about. And when like a case rig pops up, I know what to use. Like it's like, no, I'm not discarding it. I have no need right now. Because like I'm living in the streaming world. Like for me, like I have other problems to solve. Like I don't query a database or something. Like I have just like massive amounts of messages bursting through my system. I have to act on a few other things. So for me, MCP right now does not make too much sense. Like I have to come up with other things basically to do that kind of interactions. It might be, well, in the future, like just think about systems when you have to augment knowledge. Like there's like the way either you can rack everything into like your AI and you can teach it like how like an existing system works and functions, or you have an MCP server where someone put in basically the work, took the documentation apart and provided the important endpoints to like the people. That is also like, this is like context reduction, this is complexity reduction, like which can work. It really, I still think like it depends on the use case. Latency, you're completely right. That is like if I want to basically reverse engineer a database, I probably don't want to do it with an MCP. But if I talk to a system that has some core business knowledge in it, and I'm able to extract the interactions based into like some service invocations, that is added value because it reduces basically the amount of context I need in my daily work, in my LLM. And you can just go ahead and don't have to invest the time over and over again to get this kind of knowledge. So it's like, I'm not trying to be like the defender of MCP here, but like it's still like it's a tool. We know how it works, and it can probably fill some gaps that we otherwise have a hard time filling with either CLI or scripting.
I think Yuri, you have to go.
Yeah.
Me too. It's because like it's also close
to
6.
Yeah. One final question, Yuri. If you really can't stay, that's cool. One final thought, because you just brought it up, Jochen. Would an MCP be more useful when you say the CLI is basically the low level implementation, whereas an MCP could be a higher a higher order of operation, like more complex operation for people that are not so super. Okay. All right. I see you guys disagree completely. That was just something. No, that was just something that popped to my mind when you said that. Basically abstracting some complexity from a user that might not be able to really do the low level stuff.
But you can do that with CLI too. Like this is like the thing. I mean, like CLI doesn't mean low level. Like if you take kubectl is not low level. Like it's like basically the tool that you talk to Kubernetes with. You can go more like into manual stuff beyond it, build operators or anything, but like it delivers more than enough context even for a beginner to work with, and you can build application. I mean, just go back to the terminal time. This is like basically how like the whole work has worked like for many, many decades. Like interacting with systems
so we just got wieners. That's what you're saying. we mislearned, or we forgot how to actually interact with the CLI. I agree. I'm also a big CLI fan, but that's unfortunately not the truth for a lot of people. I think Sean actually brought up so he can't join us, but he sent one final message, and I think that's a good stop. Actually, I take it all back. Rather than building an MCP server, just build a REST API for any necessary dedicated endpoint and ironclad it with ACLs. I think that's probably the easy way, because then your CLI can also use the API, which in most cases, if you have a remote service, happens anyways, some way or the other.
kubectl.
Yeah,
that's how it works. Like
not only API spec. Yeah, not only kubectl, a lot of CLIs. Like basically everything that talks to a remote service is probably just using the REST API. All right, cool. So with that, I think MCP is dead.
No, it's not.
We declare it.
Let's file it under. We know about it, not right now, but maybe like a use case comes up.
It's a solution looking for a use case. But I think that is still, at least for me, a good thing. I guess investing into a CLI then makes much more sense, and putting a little bit more time into a nice design for that. All right, cool. Thank you very much. It went differently from I expected it how it works, but cool. There you go.
All right, cheers.
See you guys.
See you. Bye.
Bye.